over to you. Chris, you been following any of the playoffs? You a hockey or basketball fan?
I'm more college hoops.
So
I'm a Villanova guy, so I was a little torn. I was a house divided as far as trying to root for the 76ers, but there's 3 guys from Nova on the Knicks, so I was kind of in a win-win situation. But and I'm not really a huge NBA guy, so
yeah, fair enough. What about NHL? Do you follow that at all?
I heard the Flyers sucked this year, so that was
Yeah,
that is the all-encompassing of my knowledge base for NHL. So every once in a while I get invited to a game and I'll go and I'll be like, it's really exciting in person, but I just not my thing.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's a completely different experience, I find, when you're in person.
Oh, sure.
In Toronto, I'm a Leafs fan for better or for worse, and they definitely tugged on our heartstrings this year. We were one of the top teams in the regular season, and then we played our biggest rivals, Boston, in the first round. Went down 3-1, forced a game 7, lost in heartbreaking fashion in overtime. So we have some serious trauma, us Toronto Maple Leaf fans.
trying to clean up after the fact. Yeah, it's always the off season is always the coulda, woulda, shoulda, and if only we had, blah blah blah. And
yeah, same story, different year. Happens every single year to us. Awesome. Well, I see folks are slowly starting to trickle in.
Yep.
Maybe I'll just give it another minute or so, and then we can jump into it.
Awesome. Welcome everybody. We're going to give it another minute or so, and then I'll do a couple housekeeping items, and we'll get things started.
All right. Should we jump into it?
Yep. Welcome everybody. Really great to have you on our webinar today, the top tech tools for law firms in 2024. I'm Christo of Christo IT, and we're going to be talking to you today a little bit about what you can prepare for. And joining me is Adam Dennis from Clio. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Really excited.
Yeah, and we're going to have some time. We're going to be very respectful of everybody's time. We're going to try and keep this right around 30 minutes. We want to make sure that we get you back to whatever it is that you were doing. A couple housekeeping items. The presentation is going to be recorded, so it does have availability for you for later on. And we are going to have some questions and answers at the end of this. So please, if you're going to if you have a question, raise your hand. Feel free to put it in the chat, and we will get to all of those questions at the end of the presentation and make sure that we cover anything that we left on the table as far as unanswered things are there. If you have anything really, please feel free to raise your hand on that, because we will want to make sure that we get those things covered. And between Adam and myself, we'll try and get all the information to you. But let's kick it off, Adam. Pleasure to be sitting here presenting with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to be here, and looking forward to covering what we're seeing in the legal industry, at least as of late. So as Chris mentioned, these are sort of our core agenda items. First and foremost, we're going to talk about some of the challenges facing law firms and the broader legal industry. what trends we're seeing, both from Clio and Christo in terms of remote work. And we're also going to spend some time talking about what's important to consider when evaluating new technology and how to implement it successfully. And then, of course, we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. And Chris is going to speak to the risk-free assessment that is also offered. So in terms of the first agenda item, challenges that the legal industry is facing in 2024. Chris, maybe we'll start with you. From your side, what do you think is, maybe the top one or two things that firms or the broader legal industry is facing from a challenges perspective?
Thanks, Adam. Really, the biggest thing we're seeing is sprawl. Just from the data is just getting momentous. It's just everywhere, everything everywhere all at once kind of thing, a movie reference. But there's just information at all different corners of particularly legal firms. They're getting it in discovery, they're getting it from their clients, they're getting it, just information overload, and the sprawl of that and the different ways that we have data located and who's in charge of it and what security do we have behind it. Really getting your arms around that is it's a challenge. It's a constant challenge on a day-to-day basis, and having a plan for that, and that kind of leads me into number two, having a written information security plan. It started to become a buzzword a couple of years ago. The IRS implemented it for CPA firms, and we're really finding a lot of cyber insurance companies, insurance providers are asking for a copy of somebody's WISP even before they provide coverage. And a written information, we can get into it a little bit, but a written information security plan is basically, if I hand you some information, can you tell me how you protect it? Either through training people, policies, procedures, on an IT perspective, different technologies or protection layers that you put around it to make sure that data is safe, so that if I'm entrusting you with this, you have a plan on how you're going to protect it. So those two things really have been it's been an ongoing for a number of years, but really over the past several years with the implementation of COVID and some of the remote work things, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that's really been accelerating, and it's almost been a hockey stick of the amount of information that's been going on.
Yeah, well said. And to your first point, Chris, just being able to sort of navigate through all the data and information that's out there facing the industry, I think one thing that we're certainly recommending to our firms and our prospects is the importance of having sort of one source of truth, one piece of technology that can integrate with other tools, but that really is going to encapsulate most touch points within the firms, rather than using multiple different tools for every different aspect of the firm. There's real value in just consolidating and having one sort of true source of truth. But yeah, just wanted to add that point. But really from Clio's end, the main challenge that we're seeing law firms face in 2024 is this concept of lockup. So every year, Clio puts out a legal trends report where we pretty much anonymize and consolidate all the data across our clients into a really helpful report that goes over key data trends, key performance indicators, basically what's going on in the legal industry. We've actually been doing this for about 8 years. And this year, as I mentioned, a new term that we've coined is the concept of lockup, which basically measures how quickly law firms get paid after sending their bills to clients. And there's sort of 3 core metrics that are a part of this concept, which are realization lockup, collection lockup, and then total lockup. Realization lockup refers to the amount of revenue that's unbilled at any given time. It's also referred to as work in progress lockup. Collection lockup would be the amount of revenue that is uncollected at any given time. And then total lockup is the combination of revenue held in both realization and collection lockup. So we really pay a lot of attention to these lockup metrics because it shows how effectively a law firm bills and collects on its revenue. And that's obviously extremely important when considering how healthy a business is. So as it relates to minimizing lockup, that's going to ultimately allow a firm to have a healthier cash flow position by ultimately shortening the amount of time it takes to create invoices and then collect on those payments. And basically, our analysis indicates that the median realization lockup among law firms is about 38 days, and the median collection lockup is about 45 days, meaning total lockup would be about 97 days, or in other words, 3 months of work that's being performed before a bill is being collected on. And I think it goes without saying that there's some obvious concerns as it relates to maintaining a healthy cash flow position if firms are really struggling to generate these bills and collect on payments. So that then begs the question of, how do we overcome this, right? We've identified that there's this challenge of efficiently generating bills and efficiently collecting on payments, but what can we do to address that? And for a really complicated, complex issue, there's actually some really easy, simple solutions. So I'll speak to three. First and foremost, emailing out bills, right? It sounds very basic, but it's such a powerful and effective way to address these challenges. A lot of law firms are still mailing out their invoices, and you can imagine how that really impacts their ability to collect on payments. So just by emailing out bills, and then secondly, offering online payments so that the clients of firms can make payments online, it's going to expedite the time it takes to collect on these payments and allow the firm to keep cash on hand as opposed to spending time chasing folks down. And then the third opportunity is to automate the billing process, right? So just sort of speaking to a feature we have in Clio, we offer what we call bulk billing. So administrators and firm users can generate all the bills across the invoice in a couple clicks and then send out all those invoices to their respective clients. And by having technology to streamline the billing and collection process, firms are ultimately going to be able to reduce the amount of time it takes to generate these bills and then collect on these payments, which is going to improve their lockup and improve their cash flow position.
Yeah, that having that oxygen, that cash is absolutely that oxygen in any firm, legal or otherwise. But it's anything that you can do to even shave a couple of days here and there off of that is you're going to absolutely feel it in the bank account almost immediately.
Absolutely. And then the other trend really quickly is sort of the evolving client experience and client expectation. We know in 2024, the legal industry is just so competitive, and it's so important now more than ever to really give a lot of attention to what that client retention strategy is. And that's why we recommend at Clio really having a client-centric approach throughout the engagement of that client. One stat that I want to call out is that about 79% of clients expect a response from their law firm within 24 hours. And response time, or how quickly a firm responds to a lead, is the #1 indicator of whether or not that lead is going to hire that law firm. So it's so important that there's technology in place that's going to facilitate a quick response time, and that firms are meeting clients where they want to be met if they want to grow their firm. So simple stuff, right? Like having, an automated intake process, having a scheduling tool that, prospects and leads can use to book in with the firm. And just being really mindful of what the communication strategy is, right? Do you offer text messaging? Do you email with clients? Is it all over the phone? I think if firms are more mindful of these engagements at the top of the funnel, that's going to help them optimize their conversion rate, retain more leads, convert more leads into clients, and then become more profitable.
Yeah, we've been hearing it for years. To just make it as painless as possible to work with you as in a service industry. It just the more that you can get rid of that sandpaper or the grit in the gears, the better off that you're going to be. The better experience from the get-go. From if you have a certain lead-in time from the prospect till they become a client. Even that time is precious to make sure that you have that impression that you're giving them from the get-go of better communication strategy. This is what it's like to work with us. Here's the communication. Here's how we work.
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's all about being easy to work with. Like the best compliment we can receive here at Clio is that you guys are just so easy to work with. And I think the same will true with law firms as it does with IT organizations as well.
I was going to say I can really relate to the time to response and the time to that's you're preaching to the choir on that one. Yes.
Really, we live in a world where everything is efficient and in the moment.
Now. Yeah. Welcome to the new millennium.
That's exactly
fixie now.
There you go.
Whether it be an IT problem or a legal problem, I'm talking to you. You should be fixing it right now. Yes.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Okay, fantastic. Well, that's really what we're seeing from Clio's end as it relates to challenges. Anything else from Chris, your side, Chris, that you want to add before we move into remote work?
No, the sprawl was really, that has been something that we've been talking with our clients about, for the past couple of years now. Just the way of even just an inventory of where everything is a great place to start. And just being able to understand where all of the data is, and then you can create a plan around how do we address where all of that stuff is.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, that's a good segue into our next topic, which is what we're seeing as it relates to remote work. Obviously, since the pandemic, there's a lot of buzz surrounding this. There's been a lot of questions around whether or not there's been a return back to the office, if there's still a hybrid model. Chris, what are you seeing from your side?
Well, obviously, COVID's still in the rearview mirror. It really accelerated for us. Pre-COVID, we were about maybe 25% of the people that we support. We support a couple thousand people in the Philly area, and about 25% were either remote workers or that was their job, sales or field service of some sort, and they were out in the field, out and about. And that truly, I mean, COVID, everybody was 100%, but even after COVID and after things have kind of settled out, that really almost inverted, so that we have about 60-70% of the people that we support are remote, and some are at least part-time remote. And the thing that we've really been challenged with that is, and there's no right or wrong answer on this, Adam. There really isn't, as far as, what people have arguments about in-person, remote, and all that. That's a policy question. But how do we handle it, from a data perspective is how we come in. And as long as you have a plan, as long as you have a remote work strategy, or what the expectations are, when you say you provide hardware to people, and you're providing a corporate asset to somebody who's working in, a couple hundred miles away from your office. Are you setting expectations on a business use policy, on how they're handling using that piece of equipment that you're giving them? Even though they're not working in your office, they need to be representing you. Or if you're on the other side of the table and you're saying we have a bring your own device policy, and people are able to use their own device, there still should be set expectations around an employee bringing their own device and how they're going to use that when they're attaching to your corporate assets. So that setting the expectations is absolutely critical, so that you have a game plan for who, what, when, where, and why on this remote working aspect of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm understanding correctly, it's really all about being proactive, right? Rather than sort of making a plan in the moment, understand, what you're working towards and build around that. And I think the same holds true with technology. It's so critical that firms are adopting technology that's going to support their hybrid work policy, if that's the policy they're going to take, right? And it's interesting you say that about 60% of your clients or so are still in that hybrid phase. And we're seeing the same from our side, right? The data shows that about less than 30% of lawyers continue to work only from the office, while about 50% of non-lawyers do. So there's still a huge amount of folks within the legal industry that are either sometimes working from home or working from home all the time. And as I said before, it's just so important now more than ever that firms are using technology that enables them to work where they want to, and having a single source of truth to ensure that firms are being successful in this remote work, right? So a couple of really strong examples of that is, maybe it's important to have a mobile app within, your practice management tool, or a client portal, both to ensure that firm users can work remotely, but also to support their clients in a remote capacity. Or maybe making sure that your Zoom interacts with your practice management tool, your Microsoft Teams, whatever tools you're using internally. A big one that also comes to mind is access to documents, right? If your documents aren't being stored in the cloud, it's gonna be really challenging to collaborate remotely. And obviously, as a lawyer, building documents, reviewing documents, it's a huge part of work. So, I've been working at Clio for just under 5 years now, and I've worked with attorneys who are totally remote, and they use the mobile app to manage their entire practice. So I think it all goes back to what's your plan, right? What's your strategy? And then do you have the technology and infrastructure to support that plan, both from an internal perspective and in terms of how you work with your clients?
Yeah, and I back to what we were talking about on the previous slide, that ease, that removing the sand from the gears, making it easy for your people to get to that information. To hey, I'm out. I'm at Aunt Sally's house. It's we're Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, and I just need to be able to get access to this matter, read through a brief and reply and say, hey, we're looking into this, and get back to having that availability of getting the information that you need, so that you can get to a reply and get and give that customer the fixie now response that they're expecting, and having it wherever it happens to be is absolutely critical. I think that's giving that ease to your own people it's going to help prevent churn, because they can get to what they need to do. They're not having to push the rock up the hill within their own organizations, their own firms. And I think that really helps with both on the external side as well as the internal side.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And that's definitely a challenge that we could have highlighted in the first section, the challenge of attrition, right? It's so important now that.
Yeah, I can't relate to that at all. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, to that, like it's so
try to
important.
keep people happy. Yep.
Yeah, you got to keep people happy. And we've worked with firms now that they make sure that familiarity with Clio is a prerequisite to working at their firm, right? And I know that other organizations have similar philosophies as it relates to technology, but having technology that's going to enable your staff to do the best work of their lives is going to influence how long they stay with the firm, and it's going to influence your client's perception of the quality of your work. And within legal, we know that word of mouth referrals is the #1 driver for new business. So it's so important that we're not only thinking about your employee's experience, but also the client's experience, just because that's what's going to dictate the likelihood of them sending you additional business through their network. Okay, fantastic. Well, that leads us into our final topic. We spend a lot of time talking about the importance of having the right tools in place to achieve your goals, but it begs the question, what's the best way to go about evaluating new technology? Right, your first point, Chris, was that there's just so much out there, and it's really challenging for consumers of legal tech to discern, what they can trust, what they need. So, from your perspective, what's the first step in determining how to evaluate new technology?
Yeah, there's going to be different ways of approaching this. If you're a 10 or a 20 person law firm, if you're a 70, 100 person law firm, there's going to be the thing to avoid is the shiny new tool syndrome. Oh, look, it's going to fix all of our problems and do X, Y, and Z, and that's fine, as particularly on the pre-sale end of things. But what you want to make sure of is that you're understanding what questions to ask any vendor, but particularly ones that are going to be handling data in some way, shape, or form. So asking them the questions that you get asked. So when I give you this, how are you protecting it? Do you have compliance needs? Are you adhering to FINRA or HIPAA or some sort of Sarbanes-Oxley or some sort of governance? Are you able to meet those needs? You want to make sure that those vetting questions, when you're looking at a new technology, you're making sure from a security standpoint, who do we call if there's a problem? What do we do if there's something that happens off hours? How do we scale? How do we do this? How do we train our people? These would be questions that you would ask any vendor, but particularly the ones who are handling those data. We want to make sure that you're asking those questions consistently across the board. And sometimes those questions change. So we also recommend, at least on an annual basis, just revisiting those to make sure that nothing's changed. Everything's still, you can probably go through that checklist very quickly on an annual review basis, but you just want to make sure that all of your I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the vetting questions are so important. And, obviously, you mentioned the importance of asking those questions pre-sale, but I also think it's equally as important to also give thought to what that post-sale process looks like and make sure you're applying those same questions and thoroughness to the post-sale process. I find that sometimes, when firms are determining what vendor they want to work with, there's a lot of emphasis on features, pricing, which makes sense, right? That's going to be the immediate pain. But sometimes what's overlooked is what happens once that contract's signed post-sale, right? Is there a data migration in place? What does the training look like? What does the support look like? Speaking from my experience here at Clio, that is a huge investment from our side. Every single firm that moves forward with Clio will get a data migration included in the cost per user per month. It's not an additional fee. They'll get connected with our training team to go through workflows and onboarding. And then with support, right? Is it 24/5? Is it just email? Is there phone support? Is there chat support? Really giving thought to your point, what is that going to look like? 30, 60, 90, 120 days post-purchase, and ask the questions to make sure that you're going to flush out that key information. And then the other thing,
back to your previous slide, the remote work day is not 9 to 5 anymore, and your people working remotely they're trying to get the job done, and you want to make sure that support's there to match what your people are handling as well.
Absolutely. And then the other piece that I would absolutely highlight here when evaluating new technology, and you kind of touched on this, Chris, is really understand what you're working towards and not just getting distracted by the shiny new tools. So in other words, I think it's important for firms to define what their key performance indicators are and then work backwards to make sure you're choosing the right technology that's going to get you to those objectives and desired outcomes. So in other words, if it's determined that your billing process is inefficient or you're having a hard time with that collection rate and the lockup piece, let's make sure that we're choosing the right technology that addresses those specific pain points to ensure you're getting a good ROI, because that's what it's all about when it comes to vendor selection and technology implementation.
Yep, having those KPIs baselined before you implement something and knowing what your baseline is so that you can see the before and after picture and understand what that's doing for you.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great call out. Okay, fantastic. Well, with the final 3 minutes or so, just wanted to quickly highlight an overview of Clio, just so folks on the call have a clear understanding of what it is we do here. As I mentioned before, Clio is the leading cloud-based practice management software company, and we have 4 core modules. So Clio Grow would be our intake and CRM tool, meant to streamline and automate a firm's intake process, everything from lead management to conversion, running reports on marketing to understand where the bulk of the business is coming from. Once that lead is converted into a client and a matter opens, that casework will be done in Clio Manage. So everything from billing, documents, calendaring. We have our own in-house payment processing tool in Clio Payments. So it goes back to one of our initial points of consolidation, right? Rather than having multiple different systems that don't speak to each other to manage all the different aspects in that client lifecycle, there's a lot of value and efficiencies in having one single source of truth. And then the last piece would be Clio Draft. So as we talked about before, it's so important to have cloud access to documents and make sure you can collaborate on those documents in a really meaningful way. And that's part of what Clio Draft can offer. It allows firms to automate routine drafting of core forms. So rather than every single time having to manually create these forms, we can pull in forms from all 50 states and help users automate the creation of these forms, so it's done in a more streamlined fashion. And then really quickly, in terms of our offerings, firms can purchase Clio Manage and Payments, which is included in the Manage package. That would just be the case management solution. If firms really want to streamline that intake process, right? If you're a high volume law firm doing a decent amount of marketing and it's important for you to keep track or improve that lead management process, Clio Grow might be worth looking at. And then finally, as I mentioned before, Clio Draft would be the court form automation tool to help firms create and automate those the drafting of those documents. And then Chris, I will hand it to you over here to round us out.
Yeah, we've had the opportunity to work with you guys on a number of different firms, both getting started as well as merging data in and everything like that. And it's really been an exemplary experience from my team, and that's coming from a bunch of engineers. So consider that a gold star award there. Yeah, I wanted to because I know risk is obviously it's at the foremost of everybody's mind, and sometimes one of the questions we get I'm not sure where to get started, particularly when you're talking about this sprawl and what do we need to know and so forth and so on. And the clients that we work with here at Christo understanding that risk and working with an IT firm like us is a great way of identifying the problem. So the free risk assessment is it's not overwhelming. It's a simple 28 type question interview. It might take maybe 30, 45 minutes to do. It's not a huge time investment, but what it does generate is, it's a little hard to see on the slide here, but down along the x-axis is the probability of something that will happen, an issue that will happen. What probability is that issue going to have? And then on the y-axis is the impact it could have to your firm. So by laying these out, we can kind of identify the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. We want to make sure that those ones in the top right corner are the ones that get addressed first and have the biggest impact to you and your firm to reduce that risk and be able to sleep better at night. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to, I can send you a Calendly. We can do it over Zoom. It doesn't even have to be in person. And you get a nice report with some things that you can identify either with your current IT firm, or you can talk to us about them. And it gives you an easy way to take that first step. So yeah, I'm gonna go over here to the chat and go ahead, Adam, with the question here.
Yeah, just pulling it up real quick. Okay, so I see one question here surrounding data migration. So what does the data migration process look like? Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that comes up on every evaluation. If it doesn't, I definitely encourage folks to ask that, as I mentioned before. But as I said, it's something that Clio put a lot of thought and investment into. Every firm that moves forward with Clio would get that data migration. They would be connected with our migration team. We would have a scoping call to understand how the data is currently organized. We would discuss what can be brought over from their existing tool into Clio. And then over the next couple of weeks, our team would work behind the scenes to build the foundation and import the data within Clio. So when the firm logs into Clio, that foundation is already there. What we like to say is we'll build the house, and then the firm will sort of populate it with the furniture. Just so we make sure when you do get the keys and you go into Clio for the first time, there's some familiarity there, right? The matters are set up, the contacts are set up, any unbilled time, expenses, all of that, whatnot, is within Clio.
And on the migration end, you've worked with a lot of matter systems and everything like that to come up with. I'm imagining you're probably not surprised at being this long in business that of something that you're importing from. You've handled most of the big ones that are out there.
Absolutely, yeah. We have definitely the largest migration team in the industry. They've migrated from virtually every tool out there, whether it's another cloud provider, on-premise solution, PC Law, Time Matters, MyCase, Practice Panther, you name it. We've seen it all. And even if you're not looking to move to Clio, I would still encourage folks to really ask their vendor what they can do on the migration front, and what that process looks like. I do see another question come in here about, can you go over Clio Draft more? Would we create the template? Yeah, that's a great question. So with Clio Draft, we do have a library of templates, and we can actually pull in the court forms from your local jurisdiction, so that it's not on you to create these templates every single time, but you can leverage what's already existing and being used by other firms. Then the idea is that you can actually more efficiently populate it with the information that applies to your case, just so it's not being done manually every single time. And I can also follow up with an email with some more resources on this. If you want, we can also schedule like a quick call to chat about it in more detail. But I do want to be respectful of the fact that we are at time here. But we will be sending a recording to everyone who attended, as well as our emails are listed on the second slide. So please feel free to contact myself or Chris directly. As I said, we can either set up a time or send over some helpful information.
Awesome. Hey, Adam, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for putting this together with me. Hopefully it was some benefit to the attendees here. And as Adam mentioned, we'll get the recording loaded up and get a link to everybody if they want to play catch up on it. and we'll make that available to everybody shortly. So thank you, everybody, for your attendance and your attention, and appreciate you spending the time with us. If, again, like you said, we'll have the contacts information in there, and if you have any questions or anything that you need follow-up on, please reach out. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chris.
All right.